Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome, everyone. Roll call, Mr. Lundberg.
Ullum.
Yes.
Odie. Klatt.
Yes.
Saxer.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
All right. Agenda. If there's no changes that need to be made, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. There's no conflict of interest disclosure or waiver requests. No community input tonight. So that takes us to our first item under general business, the superintendent's report.
Yes, Madam Chair, real quick, I want to provide an update on our strategic planning process. Here at our next meeting, we will have a presentation of the proposed strategic plan, the district-wide strategic plan, and then we'll seek adoption or potential adoption for that strategic plan at our last meeting in June. With note, school board election, 2 3-year seats. We'll talk a little bit about that in further detail here under general business. Also just want to reiterate, our summer reading program will be held in conjunction with our summer lunch program. Our first day of summer lunch program was actually today. We had approximately 300 participants at Brandon Elementary for our summer lunch program, but every Wednesday starting June 6th through July 25th, we will run a story time at 10:45 and 11:30 a.m., and then we will also provide the BE library for book checkout to all of our Brandon Valley School District students. Again, want to thank Siouxland Library and Pizza Ranch for their collaboration on the program, and would note our kids' summer reading goals, 600 minutes for those junior kindergarten through 5th grade, and then grades 6 through 12 is 5 books. We'd certainly encourage all of our kids not to only meet those goals, but exceed those goals. So, another item to note, the School Nutrition Association National Conference. So we have the privilege of having Director Gay Anderson be involved at the national level. I would tell you that she is being installed as the national president here in July. Our school district will be representing in supporting her at that national conference. I would tell you that myself, President Ullum, Director Henschel, and Director Anderson will be presenting a session at that conference entitled Cooking Up Success with Your Administration and School Board. I would note that our school district receives a stipend for Director Anderson's efforts, and then we're utilizing that stipend to provide professional development to the kitchen managers, and then also offset the cost for leadership attending and presenting at the national conference. A couple of policy items to note. As you would remember back to the legislative session, there was restraint and seclusion policy requirements established in statute. Currently in the process of reviewing the current policy we have that speaks to corporal punishment, and we're looking at whether or not we need an additional policy or if we'll be able to include the verbiage for restraint and seclusion into that policy, as we already do comment and speak to restraint and seclusion within that one. So we'll have a first reading and then ultimately a second reading and adoption there at the end of June. Because July 1 is the required start date on that policy, and we do have summer school and extended school year for kiddos, so we do want to make certain and have that taken care of prior to the July 1 date. But that is being formulated, and we'll go from there. A couple items to note as we already start thinking about our next academic school year. August 16th, new staff in service. 20th and 21st, we begin with our staff here in our district, and then I would note that on August 21st, we will have our all-staff welcome back at 10:30 a.m. here at the Student Activities Center. Would certainly encourage our board to attend that if they are available, and then we start with kiddos on August 22nd. So with that, special reminder, Monday, July 16th is our annual reorganization meeting. That was changed at a previous meeting due to the July holiday and also the National School Nutrition Association Conference commitment that we have. So with that, I had 3 items. 2 items off script that I just wanted to quickly mention. The South Dakota Department of Education Secretary, Don Kierkegaard, has recently resigned his position effective July 1st. He is moving to a superintendency out in West Bend, Wisconsin. Certainly wish Don the best of luck in his future endeavors over there in Wisconsin as a superintendent. And I would note that Mary Static Smith, who is currently the Deputy Secretary of Education, will be serving in that interim role until, I believe, January. So that's one item to note at the state level. And then also just want to give a shout out to our Lynx girls track and field team. They won the AA track and field state championship. I believe it is the first in our history. So a special congratulations to our Lady Lynx girls track and field team. With that, would certainly entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Larson. That takes us to our first item under general business, approve election boards and polling sites for the Brandon Valley School District Board of Education election on June 19th, 2018.
Madam Chair, I would just note that as required in statute, we have to approve our polling boards and also our precincts. You will see in the color-coded map attached here, we have 3 precincts. Valley Springs, the Valley Springs Elementary Music Room, individuals residing in the city of Valley Springs, and Red Rock Townships would report there to vote. Precinct 2 in Brandon would be at the Brandon Valley High School Community Room. That consists of the city of Brandon and Mapleton Townships, and those portions of Sverdrup and Edison Townships. Did I say that right? Pretty close, okay. Sverdrup and Edison Townships that lie in the Brandon Valley School District. And then Precinct 3, Split Rock Township, would be at Fred Assam Elementary Gymnasium, and that's the Split Rock Township and that portion of Sioux Falls Township that lies within the Brandon Valley School District. I would note that the notice of school board election and the map will be published the weeks of June 4th and June 11th in our officially designated newspaper, which is the Brandon Valley Challenger. With that, did I miss anything, Paul, or is there anything else to note? Absentee balloting will start June 4th per Business Manager Lundberg. Anything else?
Thank you very much. So we need to, okay. At this time, I entertain a motion to approve the election boards and polling sites for the Brandon Valley School District Board of Education election on June 19th, 2018.
So moved.
Second. There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That takes us to number 2, Brandon Valley School District 2018-19 preliminary budget presentation.
Madam Chair, before I turn it over to Business Manager Lundberg, as he will outline the 18-19 budget, which is overall ultimately a 4.9% increase, I just want to thank Business Manager Lundberg and his staff for the incredible work done on this item. You know, as we receive a presentation that can last, 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, it does not do justice the body of work that exists within this $44 million budget. The accuracy with which it's done and the detail, just truly an incredible body of work. So thank you to Business Manager Lundberg, and I will certainly turn it over to him. But again, for those people that fly at 100,000 feet, I tell you, you're looking at approximately 4.9% increase with a $44.1 million operating budget for next year. But with no further ado, Mr. Lundberg.
Okay. Thank you. First thing I wanted to start out, I get it, guys. Nobody wants to sit through this. The administration out there that chose to attend, they don't want to sit through this budget hearing. A lot of times the board gets tired of hearing about it, but it is such an important part of what we do. Money it's just the driver of everything. I mean, every decision you guys make has some implication with money, so it is a very important part of your duties up here as a school board of the Brandon Valley School Board, Brandon Valley School District. So with that said, I would add just a couple comments. The budget, I think you have to look at it as more than just a fiscal planning tool. It becomes the board's document for communication of what they're going to do for the future, for the next year, where they've been, where they're currently at, and where they're going to go. It just defines a lot of stuff what you're doing, that your goals, your visions, all that stuff. A lot of it's indirect, but as you'll see when Dr. Larson presents his strategic plans, which I have not seen, so I'm just making this assumption that very few of those items that he will bring up in that don't involve some money in some shape or form. It always boils down to that, so it is a very important part. And the budget, I just think of it as a tool for you guys to communicate to the public of what you're doing and where you want to go with your school district here as a school board member. And how I kind of summarize this 18-19 school board or budget, I think it could be summarized in just one word, and that's staff. Taking care of your staff, hiring new staff, trying to maintain or lower class sizes in certain grades. A big portion of it went to rewarding your current staff. As you'll see as I get through these slides, almost all your money is spent on your staff, either new or existing. So that's the one word that it can be summed up with it in this 18-19 budget. On the first slide that we have in the presentation, it just delineates the various funds: general fund, capital outlay, special education, pension, bond redemption, and child nutrition. Gives the revenues and expenditures for each. You can see on the general fund we have a budgeted $222,000 surplus. That's what we have termed a responsible deficit, or did I say surplus? $222,000 deficit, I'm sorry. And we've termed that a responsible deficit on how we manage our fund balance. Our fund balance operates around the 20% factor, and you'll see in some later slides that we continue to maintain that and whatnot. So it's prudent for us to not hoard this money, but we have a responsible way of spending that fund balance down. I think we've done a very good job of that. The special education fund has a $362,000 surplus. It's a much needed surplus, as we've talked about, because that fund has been dwindled down to practically nothing in the last year. The pension fund, this will be the last year for the pension fund. We're spending down the fund balance in that fund, so that'll revert to the general fund in future years. So this will be the last year that we will see the pension fund in our budget. And then the bond redemption and child nutrition funds there, you can see the revenues and expenditures for each of those. The second slide is a slide on that summarizes the general ed funding formula. There's a lot of words on here. I'll try to just break it down on what happens with the funding formula. It's been driven by, as the governor has changed the formula, as he says, it's driven by the teacher salary number. That's the target instructional staff salary that each school district has to meet. But in reality, the formula is still driven by that student enrollment count, that 4,170. Everything drives that. That's the key number that you plug in and change that to see what happens. I mean, you can massage the numbers any way you want, or pick out the most important number of the slide, but reality is that student enrollment number is the one number that drives everything. The 4,170 kids is once again showing a increase in enrollment of about 113 kids. We've had increases of 100 plus over the last many years, so we're very fortunate in that respect. So that we divide that by 15, which is the state mandated number of 15-to-1 student-teacher ratio. and come up with a certain number of FTEs. And then the instructional salary, 49,132, benefits on top of that of 29%, 14,000. So they have a total staff and benefits 63,380 times that 278. The state funding formula says we should have $17.6 million in total salary and benefit need. On top of that is the overhead cost calculation of $5.5 million, which is once again a percentage, and that percentage continues to go up. It started at 31%, and that's where they're massaging in the other revenues. That's how they're being factored into the funding formula. As time goes on, next year will be the third year of that, so on and so forth. So that'll eventually be phased out, the other revenues, and just incorporated 100% into the per student allocation formula. So 17.6 million of salary and benefit need, 5.5 million of overhead costs. Then we get a little calculation for limited English proficiency kids, 26,000, gives us a total need of 23.2 million. What you can generate in local property taxes based on a state mandated mill levy is the next number, 7.5 million, gives us our state aid of 15.7 million. In addition to that, this year we get that one-time money of 165,000, so we have a total state aid number of 15.9 million. Kind of gives you a little bit of summary of how that state aid formula, excuse me, as I've said, the one thing that you remember, it's just totally driven by the number of kids that are in your district. Yes, ma'am.
Is the 31.67 coming from the state? That number, the 31.67?
Yeah, that's mandated by them, or determined by them.
And did you say that's expected to go up the
That'll
next
continue.
year?
Yeah, that'll continue to go up because they're
Yeah.
incorporating all the other revenues statewide into that number.
Yeah.
So that's the avenue that they're using to incorporate those all into there, is that overhead percentage.
So when do they give you that number?
Each year, I mean, it's built into our total needs, so that all gets into the formula, so we get it each year. And when that goes up to 32, next year it'll probably take a pretty good jump. It'll probably bump up to 32, 33, probably 33%, because there's a lot more money piling into the other revenue, or the overhead.
Is that what they told us, that number?
When that would, could have been, yep. So that'll continue to go up, and like I said, this is year 3 of a 5-year phase-in on the other revenues, so that'll continue to go up. Any other questions on the formula portion? And like I said, the governor's office will focus more on the instructional staff salary, the teacher salary number, and you can focus on any one of these numbers. I mean, you could pick the overhead number to be your prime focus number. It's just whatever number you pick there, but the real driver is the number of kids in your district. That's what drives the whole thing. The next slide is just the instructional support services and activities, how they break down 61, 35, and 3%. Next slide shows the elementary class sizes, K through 6. One of your items of your budget, I think, is trying to reduce those class sizes. You hired several teachers in the elementary level for next year, and you can see that, and the intermediate school level. Intermediate is considered elementary as far as the state's concerned, so that's K6. You hired several teachers in the intermediate school also. You can look down the grade levels as for the class sizes. These are averages throughout the district. Now, that doesn't mean that Robert Bennett's might not have 25 in a grade versus Brandon Elementary having 19 or 20. It's just how the spread works out, and this all sections throughout the district, and the average of those sections. But most all those numbers are well within your goals, I know, your guidelines, your internal guideline. We try not to put that down on paper for an exact number there. The next slide.
One second.
Yep.
This would be a great spot to point out from Dr. Larson and Mr. Lundberg that we don't have caps, but I get asked multiple times every year, what are the caps in various grade levels, as I'm sure the rest of you are asked by teachers and the public. So we don't have caps, but has been historically the goal of the board to keep our class sizes within these ranges. If you want to expound on that, that'd be great.
Sure. Member Klatt is absolutely correct. We do not have caps on our class sizes. What we do is we have open enrollment guidelines. So there's administrative regulation outlined for the purpose of determining capacity for open enrollment. So what I can tell you is I believe, and I don't have the policy in front of me, like, for example, if a kindergarten is at 22 kids, we won't accept any open enrollments. Now, if you move into the Brandon Valley School District, absolutely we'll put you in there, et cetera. But we do have open enrollment guidelines that have been established. And again, those, I think the smaller the grade, kindergartners, a little lower number, and then it grows up to that 25, 26 as you get to 5th and 6th grade. So I would tell you that there is no cap. However, we have administrative regulation for the acceptance of open enrollments for the purpose of determining capacity. And I would, when we go through our strategic plan, I'll speak to a little bit about what you have done over the course of the last year regarding reading proficiency, lower levels, some of those things. But Mr. Lundberg, back to you.
Well, so just to clarify, so open enrollment meaning coming into the district, absolutely accept, but within district is where we really have the guidelines. We're trying to, is that what?
So what I would tell you is it applies for both in-district open enrollment requests, and it also applies for out-of-district open enrollment requests. It does. I would tell you that it has been my strategy to, like, if an out-of-district individual wants to open enroll to the Brandon Valley School District, my suggestion to them is always list any building that you would be willing to attend. Because if you tell me, I want to come to Robert Bennis first grade, I'm sorry, we're at capacity, I'm not going to be able to say yes, so I'm going to deny you based on capacity. But if you say Robert Bennis, Fred Assam, Valley Springs, BE, I very likely may be able to find one. The other item I would note is that we have been able to manage our class sizes effectively with new or incoming students and sometimes directing them to one of our buildings versus having them go to their resident building to just effectively manage those class sizes. So that's been another way that we've really tried to do that to help our staff. So.
I would add, as the central office is concerned, they're looking at those all the time. And just to pick out a very basic example, you can see the third grade at 24 kids per classroom. If that just influx of kids was coming into the third grade and it wasn't coming into the first grade with 16 sections, Dr. Larson might make the decision to shift, trying to maintain those. I mean, he has the ability. That's a lot of what goes on there too, constantly. The next slide is a elementary projection for the next year. The red bars are from 17-18, the current year that we're just finishing up, and the black bars are for 18-19. As you can see, we're projecting 30 kids, plus 30 in the elementary, plus 33 in the middle school, and plus 44 in the high school, which the total of that adds up to about 107, I guess, and we're projecting 113, just how the numbers floated there in that 110 to 115 kids. I fully anticipate that we'll meet those projections. The next chart shows the expenditures for the general fund. Here you really see where your money is being spent for next year. We have an increase in our expenditures of $1.1 million in the general fund, which is 4.2%. And keep in mind, when we're looking at this stuff, we received additional money of 1.7%. Where's the excess come? That comes from the increased enrollment, the 100 kids, 100 times $5,500 per kid. That's another $500,000 that's included there. That's what allows us to do the 4.2% increase rather than the 1.7. If you're not growing, these budgets become a lot more difficult in a district where you're not growing. If I have to abide by the 1.7 or the 0.3% that each year the state gives us, it becomes a lot more difficult. you don't get to look at numbers like 3 and 4% increase in expenditures. And you can see down at the bottom where that money went to, 2.5% increase for salaries across the board, plus the one-time money that you gave amounted to a total of about 3.5% increase to your staff, $600,000. Benefit increase of $137,000. Net additional staff, $460,000. I think the net was 7 additional teachers. Classified member or so here and there on top of it. And then the other numbers become kind of minuscule in comparison to those. Our grants, federal grants went down this year, federal and state grants on Title I. We have some staff savings on the retirees, and then some increase in supplies and materials this year of $60,000. Next slide just shows the number of certified FTEs in the Brandon Valley School District throughout the years. Per pupil allocations, the dollar amount there, the top slide. For 18-19, that number will be $5,565. It's hard to tell on the chart. It's just barely above 5,500, but it's 5,565 for next year. And then you can see the percentage increases throughout the time frame there from 96, 97 on the way through. And the percentage increases, there's one dramatic drop, one dramatic increase. It's when we took the hit when the budget was balanced. There was a 10% decrease in funding, and then there was a 10% increase when they jacked up the salaries. So take those two out of there, and it pretty much levels out all the way across to about 3%.
Oh, can we go back?
Yes.
The number of certified employees slide shows for 18-19, yeah, just one slide back, shows for 18-19 277, but about 3 slides before that, maybe 4, on the general fund budget slide, we showed 278 FTEs. Are you going to try to find one more?
That 278 is what the state says that I should have if I had a 15-to-1 ratio.
Okay.
The number of certified teachers, and when I say certified staff in this chart, that includes administration. So we're quite a bit below what the state says that we should have for staff at a 15-to-1 ratio. We don't have a 15-to-1 ratio. We have about a 17-to-1 ratio.
Then don't all the schools that don't meet that ratio have to answer to the accountability board? Not anymore?
No, the ratio is,
It's kind of just an arbitrary number
Okay.
that they've picked to make the formula work. You got to have some number. In smaller schools, they put a smaller number in there, 12, I believe. Yeah. And the larger schools, they picked the larger number, 15. And just so happens that that 278 equates to the 277 here. It's real close what you're seeing, but the 277 actually includes 15 FTEs of administration to certified administration. So our actual teacher number is 260.
And does the 277 listed here include like school psychologists and some
Yes.
of those things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any certified staff member in the Brandon, is included in the 277. So it's, don't compare it to that 278 is what we're talking about there. So 5565 is a number to remember for the per pupil allocation. The cost per student allocation or chart that follows there. You've seen this before. This is where Brandon Valley ranks as the dollars that they spend per pupil as compared to all the other schools, the larger schools across the state. Our number is 7,747. There's only one school in this chart that spends any less, and that was Spearfish, $7,563. You can see the large school average, which I have listed just because it fits in their ESD schools. There's other schools not including the ESD, but 8,162 is basically the average for the large schools. And in the state of South Dakota, the average is $9,256. We have been and continue to be very efficient with the dollars that are allotted to us as a school board here. The general fund balance history, I alluded to that earlier, of our responsible spending down of that fund balance to a certain point. We will be at the end of this year about 5.3 million, maybe a little stronger than that. And then if we spend down the 222,000, next year we'd be at about 5.1 million, which runs right at the 20%, 19.5%, or however it turns out there. So we're maintaining that 20% fund balance for the foreseeable future. And in the 5-year plans that we project, I show you going down into the categories of 14, 15% throughout the years, and that's probably the lowest that we want to ever go, the general fund. Questions there? The general fund revenue chart, 27 million, where does that money come from? The state sources, 61.8%. And then basically, if you take the operating transfers in, which is an operating transfer from the capital outlay fund, which is all property tax money, local taxes and local sources, those three added up together is about 35%. So the 35 plus the 62 from the state, 97% of our money is summarized right there. Taxes and state aid pretty much summarizes it. That operating transfer in from the capital outlay fund was part of our strategy to level it out when we took the big cut, the 8.6% or 9.6, whatever it was, when we took the big cut from the governor's office in our funding. That was one of the avenues that we used to level that out so we didn't have to lay off staff and cut salaries and people. Other revenues history is the next chart, shows gross receipts, bank franchise, and county apportionment, how they've done throughout the years. You can see the gross receipts model being pretty much on an angle straight upward and kind of leveling off the first few years, these last few years. Bank franchise has been a roller coaster throughout the years. Seems to be leveling off at $500,000 or a little better here lately. And the county apportionment is right at about $160,000 in the last few years. Now this will probably be maybe one more year I'll show this chart, but it'll be gone here in a while. We won't have the discussion that we've had for many years about the other revenue helping us out. It's all getting equalized. Now, it's not detrimental to the Brandon Valley School District getting it equalized. I think when they first implemented the law, I figured that the whole thing out, and it was like a net of $20,000, one way or the other. I can't even remember which way it was, but it was pretty much net neutral on the other revenue, because we had taken such a downward swing in the bank franchise tax. Now, if it would have hit us when we were at $1 million in bank franchise tax, we would have taken a sizable hit. But we've been down in the $400,000 or $500,000 range the last few years. So that'll probably be the last year for that slide. The capital outlay fund now, $5.4 million we're spending in capital outlay fund. Excuse me. You can see the operating transfer of $675,000, technology $1.1 million, facility improvements $2.178 million, transportation $320,000, and debt service of $555,000. Those 5 items right there account for 90% of the expenditures in capital outlay. Now I want to just point out on the debt service, this whole issue of debt with the Brandon Valley School District is something that you guys should be very, very proud of, the way we operate this. We have 10% of our capital outlay fund that we're currently spending on debt. You go down and look at the state websites and the reports of all the other large school districts. This number is inevitably a third to a half of their capital outlay fund is spent on debt service. And this is 10%. So I think the key there is what I jotted down in the next slide. You've showed restraint in your purchasing habits and waited until you could afford to pay the bill. You haven't put AstroTurf on the football field until you had the $1 million to pay for it. You haven't built an addition on the high school until you had the $2.5 million or whatever that we paid cash for it. Now that really, it is a situation of showing restraint because it's easy to just issue a bond. I mean, we can issue a bond, no problem. Everybody wants the Brandon Valley School District bonds, but you have to pay for that over 20 years, and we've, I think, shown that restraint to wait and try to plan for it and wait until we could afford to pay the bill cash. That's been a very big plus, because what's that do for us? It allows us to spend $1.1 million on computers. It allows us to spend $2.2 million on continually improving our facilities. It allows us to buy 2 new buses for $300,000 every year. It allows us the ability to do those things. We can't do those things if we have 50% of our capital outlay fund being spent on debt. See, the 5.5 million is our total, 5.4 million is our total capital outlay fund. Well, half of that would be $2.7 million in debt service, which is what you would see on a lot of school districts of our size throughout the state of South Dakota. Our number, 500,000. Big difference. Which the only debt in the next slide that we have is the little bit of debt at the intermediate school. When we ran that bond issue, we did a little bit of a bond issue and a little bit of a capital outlay certificate. And that's how we ended up with that debt.
Paul, just a
Yes,
question on that debt service with the interest rate environment that we've been in and where we expect rates to go to increase. Will that have any impact on this current debt service?
It will not, because obviously we're locked in with our bonds that we have right now, but you should note that the bonds that you refunded just not too long ago pretty much hit the low. They, it's better to be lucky than good. You hit the low on the refinance of the bonds, and what we refinanced there was the small capital outlay refinance on the intermediate school and the small GO bond on the intermediate school. We refinanced those, and it was an advanced refinancing, so those monies are being held in escrow, and you'll see the benefits start when we get a couple years down the road on those, because they were pretty advanced refunds there, but yeah, the cost of doing business, you know, you look at it, potentially building another school here in 5 years, that gets a lot, those numbers get a lot larger when you factor the debt on those numbers as compared to what we did the intermediate school or Fred Assam Elementary or what have you. It becomes more difficult as the interest rates continue to go up. Special ed, as you saw on the first slide, we are budgeting a surplus in there, a much-needed surplus to get us back on track with that fund. $5.9 million of total expenses. The 2017-18 budget was $5.7 million, $243,000 increase. That's 4.3% increase in the special ed fund. Where does the money come from in special ed? $6,275,000. 46% comes from our local taxes, 42% comes from the state, and 12% from the federal government. Pension fund, as I said, this will be the last year that we'll be funding anything out of that pension fund. It'll roll into the general fund next year. Not next year, the following year. But we will pay our $293,000 of early retirement incentives out of that fund here this year, and then we'll close that fund out at the end of this year. There'll just be $40,000, $50,000 left in there that'll roll into the general fund. The bond redemption fund, another very much a positive, I think, as far as the Board of Education is concerned. The middle slide there, the middle slot, Robert Bennis Elementary, $898,000. That's what we're going to pay this year in total debt service, principal and interest. Those top numbers are $395,000 for the intermediate school and $1.6 million for the Assam Elementary and the high school edition. Those are the principal and interest payments that we will make on that. Robert Bennis Elementary, the middle slide, will be essentially done 7/1/2020. Those bonds were issued originally for 20-year bonds, as we always do, and so it'll end up being 17 years. We'll have those bonds paid off 3 years early, so it's a great thing. And just look, folks, I mean, it's 17-18 school year, 18-19, 19-20, a couple years down the road. Guess what you'll probably would be wanting to do? Build another school. There's $1 million in our current tax levy that's being levied currently, so that it's just very much a plus to be able to say, Sandy Klatt and Greg Odie can go out to public. We can build this school, and literally your taxes will not go up from what they were the year previous. Now, I'm not making that statement there because who knows what the debt service will be at that time, but you have $1 million to work with at that time in your bond redemption fund. And then I was also analyzing Assam Elementary and the high school edition. You know, it's kind of like when you look at your parents when you're 16 years old. They seem old when they're 55, but 2027 isn't that far off. It's going to be 2020, and that's only 7 more years on that thing. In the high school edition, what we're talking about there is the activity center and onto the school there in the 2-story addition. Child nutrition, not much to talk about there. We're proposing no increase in prices. Gay was able to work that formula where they made us increase the prices the federal government has in the last couple of years, and it's been my contention that kind of, if we don't need the money, let's not raise the price. And we got by it this year. That 2.464 in revenue and 2.448 in expenditures. So these prices are the exact prices that we had this year. The little chart on the bottom right shows the free and reduced numbers. Regular price, 80% of our population is regular price meals, and 20% of our population is free and reduced. Now that is up, but not much, since it's been, when I first started, those numbers were like 13, 14%, and they've inched up throughout the years and whatnot, but still very, very low. Property valuations, I just got these numbers on Friday. And Minnehaha County is going through a software update right now, and it's just bedlam in there. The people that I normally talk, they don't know if they're coming or going. They're trying to get this software all up to date, and it's just, you know how that goes when you put a new software program in your office. It never works, and it always breaks down. In the meantime, everybody's asking for their valuation numbers, and they also have to get tax bills out, blah, 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 and so they're working very, very hard. Bottom line on our numbers for 18-19, what they're showing us right now is at $1,977,000,000, which is an increase of 11%, almost $200 million increase. Most school districts in the state of South Dakota don't have $200 million of taxable valuations. We went up $200 million, just under $2 billion of valuations. I called one of our bond consultants on this, because when you issue bonds, you project growth into those, or what your valuation will go up each year. You project those numbers. And my bond consultant was laughing at me. He said, "Lundberg, you got these numbers at $2 billion out these years, way out there." And I said, we'll hit that. And so I called him back. I said, "Look what I got now, $2 billion. So it did come to fruition. The next chart just shows the evolution of it since time, how we've gone up in the percentages. With this 11% increase, it's kind of getting back into the glory days of when we were going up 10% each year and whatnot. It's a big jump for us in valuation. Now remember, special ed and general fund are driven by student count. Increase in valuation helps everybody within the state. I mean, statewide, the valuations did not go up, went down a tick actually. That's what you'll see in the last slide, or one of the last slides there, with our mill levies. Statewide, the valuations did not go up. And so that's how fortunate we are in the southeastern corner here, Sioux Falls area, of going up 11%. Wow. Which the next slide there shows that our mill levies are pretty much the same until you get down to special education fund. That's the one that they really had to tweak, because the valuations did not go up statewide very much. So we taxed the maximum in special education fund, and that maximum last year was $1.46. Next year it'll be $1.57. Now the good thing in the bond redemption fund, with that increase in valuation, we're able to lower our levy in the bond redemption fund, the same 10 cents, or close to the same 10 cents that we went up in the special education fund. So net, if you get down to the bottom there, total commercial levy 12.96 versus 12.97 for next year. Owner occupied is 935. That's our houses. The mill levy should remain almost identical to what it is right now. Now, I can't control what the valuation of your home goes up by the county auditor, but the mill levy should remain pretty much the same.
So that's the point that the school board, the Brandon Valley School Board should make, is that while we are not increasing taxes, the county will increase the valuation, and your tax is based on the valuation, which
could
you know
go
from
up.
serving on your equalization board. So we're not increasing taxes, but people will probably have to pay more in taxes when their valuation increases. We're just not hitting them doubly by increasing the tax along with a property valuation increase that doesn't come from our hand.
Right. We can't control that number. Which speaking to the same thing on the next slide, important slide, I think the bottom portion of this slide is what's important to me and should be to you as a school board. In 2004, 61% of the dollar of taxes was, I'll say, caused. It was the school district's tax, 61%, and county and city were 39% back in 2004. The evolution at 2018, that dollar, 53% of that dollar is school board related now, and county and city are 47%. So charts are going in the opposite direction. And that is something that comes up with me in the coffee talk. You know, everybody says when you're in coffee, they're still the old school, at least the guys I hang around with, they're the old school that 60 cents of every dollar goes to the school. Now that's changed. So remember that number. It's getting more closer to the 50-50. Not 60 cents on every dollar is because of the school. 53 cents of every dollar. That's all the charts I have. The budget book was presented or given to you in your board packet. I'm sure everybody just sat down and drilled through that with joy and delight. It becomes very burdensome, I realize, but it is some useful information included in there. The number of FTEs in each building is the top portion of each chart or each page that shows those numbers. It is valuable information at some point. It's very valuable to us as an administration and somewhat valuable to you as a school board. You don't really get down into the details of that as a school board, but it's information at your fingertips. That's all I have. I think you guys should be proud of what you've got going here as a school board. And as I said earlier, where you've been, where you're going, where you are now, and where you're going is all positive from a financial standpoint. We'll adopt the final budget in July. I don't anticipate. Now with this increase in value, you know, when I prepared the budget, I didn't anticipate an 11% increase in our valuation. So when I present again in July, there'll be a shift of some of the local revenue because some of it will go back on our local residents. It won't change any of the total numbers, but it'll change what's state driven and what's local driven. So there'll be a shift in where the money's coming from based on that increase in valuation, but totals, I don't anticipate anything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions for Mr. Lomberg? If not, we appreciate you presenting that to us so that we can be prepared to answer questions in the community. So thank you again very much. All right, that takes us to our consent agenda under general business. I would entertain a motion to approve 1 through 6 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That takes us to personnel, items number 1 through 7. I would entertain a motion to approve that as presented.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Under communication, there are 5 thank yous for you to review at your convenience. And that takes us to formal board reports. Are there any formal reports at all tonight that anyone would like to present?
I would just say on behalf of student activities, huge congratulations to the Brandon Valley boys baseball team on their championship win.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, that looks like it takes us to the end of our scheduled agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.